when a once arrogant admits his mistake. Chase Sayao James's sincere apology to Deep. Front yard purple leaves quiet afternoon. A gentle breeze blew through the banana garden behind the house. James's father, a man who once carried a proud appearance, today suddenly became quiet, eyes filled with remorse. He slowly walked into the gate. Holding the hat, he bowed to his mother Deep, then turned to look at the girl who was busy picking vegetables in the corner of the yard. Father groaned softly. Let the purple leaf uncle come here to apologize. Deep paused. She slowly stood up and turned around. Eyes lit up with surprise mixed with cordial. She did not answer immediately. The air seemed to freeze. Deep was silent for a moment, then said softly, "You don't have to do that, I don't blame you." Father James interrupted with a trembling voice. "Oh, need to do. All this time I thought I was right, but I was wrong. You underestimated me and disregard the children's feelings until I saw him groaning for his grandchild and disregarded everything. I just realized there are things that cannot be compared with money or status." Deep pursed her lips and her eyes filled with tears. Past hurts come flooding back, but the man's sincere voice in front of her makes her unable to be cold. Deep choked. "I never expected to receive an apology from you. Just hope you understand. We came together for nothing but love. Cha James, I understand. I'm sorry for being so arrogant, and sorry for causing you so much pie. If possible, I hope you accept this apology as a father." At this moment, Deep's mother walked out of the house. "See that scene?" She nodded slightly to Deep. Deep looked towards James, who was standing at the far end of the village road. Silent smile. She nodded tearfully and said she accepted. "But please don't just say sorry. Please make up with James. He needs a father more than a boss." Father James was shocked. Then he nodded slightly and turned away to hide his tears. Into Deep's house after Father James left, the sound of the engine fading away. Deep stood still, watching the figure of that man, heart filled with indescribable emotion, both relieved and sad. Her mother came forward and placed her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. Gentle mother to Deep. Old people know how to admit mistakes are precious. Not everyone is brave enough. Look back at the mistakes I made. 'Cause where? Deep nodded slightly, then turned back into the house, her eyes still red. She doesn't quite forgive. But maybe she chose to let go so that everything could start over. A moment later, James arrived at the house of the dead leaf. As soon as the groan arrived, Deep's mother opened the door. She smiled gently, no longer wary as before. "Mother to Deep, your father just arrived." He apologized to Deep. "Son, I think he was sincere." James was stunned. He said nothing for a few seconds, as if to confirm a guy. "See if I heard wrong." James hoarsely said, "Excuse me?" Deep's mother nodded. "Yes, talk very gently. Go in and talk to Deep. She's very emotional." In the room, Deep was sitting and folding the letters James had sent. James walked in. The sunlight through the crack of the door shone on her face, tired but peaceful. He sat down next to her, his eyes softening. "James, softly, I heard your mother say my father has arrived." To Deep looked up and their eyes met. She nodded and smiled softly. To Deep, at first I thought I wouldn't cry. But when he bowed his head sorry, I couldn't help it. James was moved to tears. I don't know what to say. I thought he would never bow his head in this life, especially in front of the girl he loves. To Deep took his hand. "Maybe because you have changed. And I don't give up." So he finally saw it. James squeezed her hand, tighter than the one who placed a kiss on her forehead as a thank you. Quietly outside the yard, the wind blew through the banana guard. The rustling of leaves is like a blessing of peace. James' mansion, late afternoon. James opened the gate of the car that stopped in front of the yard. He walked into the living room where his father was sitting alone. The late afternoon sunlight shines through the window. Gray hair. The tea on the table was still steaming. He seemed to be waiting for him. "James, I heard from Deep's mother that your father went to see her." His father raised his head. Two men looking at each other without power distance. Just two people. Two generations are trying to understand each other after many years apart. Heart. Father James' deep voice. "I never thought there would come a day when I would have to apologize to that girl. But Dad was wrong." James quietly. 3 denied everything. Blamed the situation on the family over there. "Dad once told me not to get involved with a country girl. So what now?" Father James bowed his head. "I am also human and I know I am wrong. Just took too many years. Just realized how much I hurt others." James suppressed his emotions. "Dad hurt me. Hurt her whole family. But she still forgives. And the baby is still learning how to do it." He nodded silently for a long time, then slowly stood up and walked closer to James. "Father James, thank you for not giving up. Thanks to you, I dare to bow my head before the truth." James clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. Then he sighed, like removing a stone from my heart for so long. "James, if you really want to change, let the past stay. Help your child do it again, not for fame, but for the people we love." Two men looking at each other. Then Father James slowly placed his hand on his son's shoulder. For the first time in years, no longer the strict gaze of a father, forced children to live according to the framework, but a feeling of regret and a heart-wrenching love. To Deep's house, a peaceful early morning. The sound of a rooster crowing in the distance, the morning sun seeping through the leaves. To Deep's mother is preparing tea in the yard. Gently wipe each porcelain cup that she has saved for a long time. Today is a special day. James's family officially came to visit for the first time. Please allow To Deep and James to be together. To Deep stood in the kitchen quietly, looking out into the yard through the crack of the door. She wore a simple light pink dye. Hair boo. Face still shows worry, even though I know the ending will be peaceful. Mother To Deep said softly and smiled. Don't worry, baby. Sometimes he comes. Just to see you once is enough. Know how worthy you are of his so. Already. Sound of car stopping outside the gate. To Deep gently held his hand. James walked in first wearing a white shirt and trousers, followed by his parents and grandparents. Mr. Pham is not wearing a suit today as usual. Just wear a simple windbreaker. Walk a little slowly as if trying to keep humble. Father James looked around the house and said softly, "Beautiful warm house." Mother James smiled at Tadeep. "You are still the same as the first time I met you, gentle and understanding." Tadeep bowed politely and invited Tay into the house. In the quiet air. At first, he held her hand under the fish table and squeezed it gently. Transmit warmth as reassurance. Father James looked at Mother Tadeep after taking a sip of tea. "We came here today to apologize to the family, then to ask permission to take your daughter as a daughter-in-law. All the mistakes of the past. I hope you and your nephew will give us a chance to correct our mistakes." Space seemed to be silent for a few beats. Tadeep's mother looked at Tadeep for a moment, then turned to Mr. Pham and smiled gently. "Mother of death, if we adults make mistakes, our children suffer the most. How they love each other truly. My family does not keep. I just want my daughter to live happily." Tadeep could not hold back her tears. She turned away, wiped away her tears, then turned back and bowed her head. "Purple leaf. I don't need anything big. As long as James is with me like now, and both families always maintain tolerance like today." Father James choked up. "My daughter, sorry. I owe you a lifetime of trust." At that moment, James stood up and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He knelt down before Tadeep, opened the box, and inside is a sparkling ring. Simple but elegant, just like their love. "James, I am not perfect. My family too. But if you agree, I will use both my life to protect your smile. Will you marry me, Tadeep?" Tadeep burst into tears and nodded. "Tadeep, yes, I agree." A soft clap from her mother and warm eyes from Father James are the most beautiful dots for a journey that has overcome many storms.